What's up guys, Tommy Bowyer here from Movie Rewind, and today I will be reviewing Casualty Series 24. There will be spoilers in this review, so without further ado, let's get into it. Casualty Series 24 contains 48 episodes. It aired from the 12th of September 2009 until the 21st of August 2010. And honestly, I would say that Series 24 of Casualty is top tier Casualty. I mean, it has everything a successful series of Casualty should have. It has compelling characters involved in really strong and well-written storylines, some of which are quite taboo topics, which are not brought up very often. But also, just like any series of Casualty, and what separates it from a normal soap opera or drama series is that it has a medical twist to it. The writers put a lot of time and effort into all the medical procedures, into all of the patients, and that is what makes Casualty so good. It's that incorporation of the drama that all the regular characters are involved in, combined with all the medical stuff as well. And that's what makes a strong series of Casualty. And honestly, some of the stunt work in this series, which is obviously another aspect of Casualty I really enjoy, are some of the most memorable and impressive stunts Casualty have ever done. So, Series 24, straight off, first impressions, the gold standard of Casualty. It really is. The themes of this series, well, I would say a large part of Series 24 is about training and corruption. Obviously, the two go hand in hand, don't they? We see some new F2 doctors, and they're great because you get to see these characters develop throughout the series. At the start of the series, they're not very confident, they're often very eager to learn, but they don't really know what they're doing. Sometimes they can be arrogant. By the end of the series, they're developed as strong ED doctors. They've learned a lot, they know how to be respectful, and they know how an ED works, so that's really great to see. And also incorporated with the F2 doctors training is the idea of the Jaffa Award. Now, the Jaffa is an award which is awarded to ED doctors, and only one of them will be picked. So while these new F2s are all trying to get on as friends, there's also that competitiveness as well, and they're trying to outplay one another and kind of show that they're the best doctor. So I like that as well because it adds some excitement to those characters. And as I said, corruption is a massive aspect of Series 24. We see Ruth Winters get involved with a professor who's trying to cover up a trial in which patients are dying, and he's trying to cover it up and blame it on Nurse J. Foldren. So yeah, there's a lot of corruption going on in Series 24. And actually, the final part of the series is dedicated to this idea of a drugs trial being conducted by Robert Ludlow, who is portrayed by Alec Newman, who portrayed a character in Waterloo Road. Really strong actor, and this guy is a great character. For the simple reason, he's conducting this drugs trial to try and save his daughter, who's slowly dying, but he's rushed it. So now people are dying, and they don't have a clue who was involved in the drugs trial. And not only that, but Robert Ludlow is also in charge of the Jaffa Fellowship. So there's a lot of corruption going on. He tries to cover it up, which I think is great. It just adds so much excitement. Everyone is trying to backstab everyone in Series 4, so you never really know what's going to happen. There's a lot of plot twists. Generally, Series 24 deals with issues really well. It deals with issues which you don't really see a lot of in dramas, or especially at this time. There's a lot about grief and underage pregnancy, so there's a lot of issues which wouldn't have been dealt with as much at the time. So I give props to Series 24 for dealing with these issues. Plus, as I said in the introduction, some of the stunt work is great. If I had to pick out specific examples, the opening two-parter, the factory fire, is amazing. All of the stunt work done on that is just great. And also Adam and Jessica's car crash, which happened in the new year of 2010. Casualty started off the decade in a really strong fashion. That stunt sequence, and actually those episodes in general, I would say are some of the best I've ever seen in Casualty. So the stunt work, definitely 10 out of 10. Much like this series, really. A series of Casualty is only as strong as the characters that are in it, and honestly, I really enjoy the characters in this series of Casualty. I would say this is one of the strongest teams they've ever had, just because the acting is so good and the characters are just so compelling. As I said, we get introduced to 3 new F2 doctors, Lenny Lyons, Yuki, Reid and May Phelps. All 3 are great characters. if not all of them, very likeable. Lenny Lyons is a very arrogant character at first, but you start to learn that he actually has quite a tragic backstory with his mum being a drug user and him being thrown into care. So you feel he is a character who's constantly trying to prove his worth and prove that he's got what it takes to be a doctor. Yuki, Reid, one of my favourite characters during this series, because he reminds me of me in many ways. He's a very shy character. He kind of knows stuff, but would prefer to just be in the background. Plus, he has a massive crush on May Phelps, who he's been around with for years. But of course, May is not that interested. And speaking of May Phelps, very unlikable character. But there is potential there. At first, she comes across as quite a privileged character. Her dad was high up in medicine, which is why she became a success. And she's kind of flirted with Yuki in order to get what she wants. Now, near the end of her tenure in Casualty, she breaks a patient's neck, forces Yuki to take the blame, and then tries to stitch him up. Leads to Yuki's mental breakdown, which is really horrible to watch. But it is satisfying because May finally does the right thing, takes the blame, and hopefully leaves medicine for good, because May was never really cut out for this. Another character which dominates Series 24 is Consultant Adam Truman. Now, at the end of Series 23, he seemed to have everything he wanted. He was now clinical lead. He'd got the girl in terms of Jessica Harrison. They had their young son, Harry, who was a baby. And he seemed to have everything he had. And Casualty is great because as soon as a character seems to be at the height of their happiness, they'll bring them crashing down to earth. And that's exactly what happened. On their wedding day in New Year's 2010, they had a car crash. Their son Harry died, which was tragic. Those scenes were so emotional. Tristan Jamal, he kills it as Adam. He really does. And obviously Jessica decides... Jessica's a very selfish character, I think, anyway, to just leave him because she can't cope. So he's left without a family on his own. And that's when the depression starts. Now, Casualty deal with this very well because Adam goes through all of the stages of grief, which then lead to full-blown depression. So they do handle it well. And I am actually glad that by the end of the series, Adam's kind of come to terms. There's some really gripping episodes when Adam comes face-to-face with a serial killer, because this serial killer gets off on the idea of Adam's son having been killed in such a tragic way. And Adam finally decides, you know what, it's not his fault. He's not to blame, which is great. Adam finally learned not to blame himself. But as I say, Tristan Jamal, he's definitely the standout during this series as Adam. He does an amazing job. We get some great relationships formed during this series. We get Nick and Zoe and Ruth and Jay. Really great pairings, but they both fail. Nick and Zoe fail because Zoe lied about her pregnancy. Even though she didn't have to lie, Nick would have understood. And Ruth and Jay, oh, Ruth. She just decides, you know what? I need to focus on my career. Even though she's happy with Jay, and Jay clearly loves her. So I don't get Ruth Winters. I really like her as a character, but why don't she follow her heart for once? Charlie Fairhead. He's active in this series. You don't usually see him active in Modern Casualty, but in this series he has a heart attack. And he has to deal with the fact that this girl called Shona is pregnant with his son's Louis' baby. So... that's quite interesting. Charlie has a lot to do this series, and the heart attack stuff I think is dealt with really well. Overall, I really like the characters of Series 24. We also see some new arrivals. We see Kirsty Clements, who's a really great senior staff nurse. I like her conflict she has with Tess. Some of the departures are okay. As I said, I don't like Jessica Harrison, but the way she departs is quite cruel on Adam. And Alice, a healthcare assistant. And I really like Alice, and because Alice and Curtis dominated Series 23, but you hardly see Alice in Series 24. She supports Adam and then decides Adam hasn't treated her that well, so leaves. So I don't know, I didn't like Alice's departure. It was it was in the background. It was never really dealt with, and I think Alice deserved a lot better than that. But overall, really enjoy Series 24. All of the characters in it, they're great, and the acting is top notch. So my final thoughts on Series 24 of Casualty. As I said in my introduction, it's a top tier series of Casualty. You have a really great bunch of characters. As I said, this is one of the strongest casts Casualty have ever had. There is no actor who gives a phoned in performance during this series, and you can tell they all get on as well. It might seem minor, but it makes a massive difference because it makes these characters feel like they work together every day. They're in a workplace, they have a kind of jokey relationship, they all support one another, and I like stuff like that. You need comedy to go with the more tragic stuff as well. Speaking of the storylines, some of these storylines are some of my personal favourite. You have Adam tragically losing his young son Harry, which eventually sees him spiral into depression. That's handled really well. Tristan Jamal did an amazing job with that. You have the more dramatic storylines such as Charlie's heart attack, as well as the opening two-parter which sees a factory fire ignite and tragically leads to the death of one of the F2s, which I think is handled really well as well. Then you have more entertaining storylines such as Jeff and Dixie's wedding. Sounds bizarre. Jeff and Dixie decide to get married to please her dying father, which is quite compelling, but it's also a bit of a laugh as well. I really like characters like you've got Dixie and Jeff, they get on well. You've got Noel and Big Mac, they're always quite funny characters. You need funny characters as well to take away from some of the more depressing stuff which is going on. Then by the end of the series you have the more tension built over the Jaffa competition and the drugs trial cover-up, which I think is handled well. Overall, Series 24... it's an amazing series of Casualty, one of my personal favourites. I honestly think, and while I like modern Casualty, they should look back at Series 24, because this really was Casualty, in my personal opinion, at its peak. So if any current writers are watching, which I don't think they are, go and watch Series 24 and try and incorporate it into the modern series. So thanks for watching, guys. I really do hope that you enjoyed my review of Series 24 of Casualty. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe in order to receive great and maybe even improved quality content in the future. Now I have just started watching Series 25 of Casualty. I actually can't remember a lot about Series 25 of Casualty, so I don't know if it's going to be good or bad, but I'm really looking forward to checking it out, and I will see you in another one. See ya!